Greetings, metalheads, and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George, and today I'm back with another top pick album, another pick of the day. Something that I have been listening to pretty much daily over the last few weeks, because if you've been following the channel, you probably noticed that I've been on a little bit of a thrash metal bender of late. I've been really digging my thrash metal after mainly listening to sort of black metal predominantly over the last, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year. That's been my main focus. I've also been enjoying quite a variety of different extreme metals, death metal, a little bit of thrash here and there, but all sorts of things. Some weird and wonderful things. But I've been really particularly enjoying thrash lately. Revisiting some classics, some absolute favourites of mine. So I've talked on the channel recently about Metallica's Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning. I've also talked about Anthrax, particularly their Kings Among Scotland, absolute live killers of an album. I've been focusing on different things, new and old. But the album that's really standing out for me at the minute is an album that I heard for the first time many years ago, so nothing particularly recent, but I decided to pick this one up again on the strength of the debut album, which I revisited not that long prior, and just kind of went with that chronology. Checked out the first one, really dig that, checked out the second, and I was absolutely blown away by just how freaking good the 1986 sophomore album number 2 from UK Thrash's Onslaught truly is. This is a monstrous album entitled The Force. So this is obviously the lovely vinyl format that we've got going on here, which is actually a picture disc vinyl in a sleeve. Very nice. I picked this up recently. So that's the most recent edition. First came across it as part of this excellent box set, this Back on Black release from, I think it was 2021 actually, longer ago than I thought. So this documents the bulk of their catalogue up to a demo kind of compilation that we get entitled The Shadow of Death. But we've got the first 4 albums and then a compilation and some live stuff as well. But this is great. And I remember picking this up pretty much on a whim. Was intrigued, heard a lot about Onslaught, got into that in quite a big way, but then kind of left the Force until, as I say, I revisited not that long ago Onslaught's debut, Power from Hell, which came out in 1985, and was pretty impressed. This is rooted in the kind of punky crossover thrash, but also it's got that kind of Venom, maybe Hellhammer kind of imprint there as well. But again, you can tell there's an influence from obviously what was happening in maybe the American thrash metal scene and probably in the European thrash metal scene. But when we get to the second album, The Force, which I also have here in nice tape format, so we've got all 3 formats. This is such a freaking good album. It consists of 7 tracks in total, and this is very much, in my opinion anyway, very much ahead of the time. This is 1986, which is arguably one of the biggest years for thrash metal, and it's the same year that saw the release of Slayer's 3rd album, a benchmark album, Rain in Blood, of course, which came out in the autumn of that year. It was also the year that we had the 2nd album from Creator, Pleasure to Kill. We've also then got the 2nd album, Eternal Devastation, from Germany's Destruction. I think we've also got a few other notable names, such as Master of Puppets from Metallica, out in the same year, a little bit earlier on. But this is the same year. The Force was released in the same year as those absolutely pivotal benchmark albums. And when we're talking about those US bands, the likes of Metallica and Slayer, you know, mentioning those Teutonic thrash bands, Destruction, Creator. The overall sound of the Force, being that this is a UK thrash band from Bristol, I believe, this is sitting quite comfortably in the middle of those two sounds. And it's quite difficult to describe, but any fan of Creator or Destruction will know that that style of Teutonic thrash is different to what we were getting from Metallica and Slayer at the time. I think that there is definitely an influence on the Force of certainly both sides of the, I guess, the pond, where we've got, or the ponds, I should say, where we've got that kind of Teutonic edge in terms of the aggression, certainly, where maybe it's not quite as fast and furious as what Metallica was, but it's certainly got the weight and the brutality of bands like Destruction, for example, or Creator. I think that there's definitely an imprint of Slayer, certainly Hell Awaits kind of era, and also maybe Bonded by Blood era Exodus as well. So this, you know, this is going to appease the fans of both styles. So we've got our Bay Area thrash or US thrash, then we've got our Teutonic thrash as well. Definitely going to tick the boxes for fans of either style, absolutely. But what we actually get here is an album which is 7 tracks in duration, so it's not an overly long album, but it is weighty. It's freaking bestial stuff. An interesting band. They've undergone a lot of lineup changes over the years. This does actually feature Cy Keeler on vocals, who was on this album, and then I think he departed the band and then came back many moons later for the Killing Peace album. You've got the main man, Nige Rocket, and then you've got Steve Grice, Paul Mahoney, and Jace Stallard as well. Not sure if the other members there are still present. I think other than Nige, I don't think anyone is. That said, doesn't really matter, because what you get here on The Force is one seriously heavy thrashing album. Definitely ahead of its time, definitely, in my opinion. Just as heavy and just as good as anything that was coming out of Germany with Creator, Sodom, Destruction. Maybe not quite as much of a benchmark album as Master of Puppets, but if you're just going to talk about heaviness, then definitely, it's definitely as heavy. There's almost a little bit of a death metal, embryonic death metal vibe there as well, an undercurrent, which is almost, it's a little bit too heavy to be conventional thrash, but obviously death metal was in its very infancy, brewing away under the surface at that time. So let's talk about some of the key tracks here then. The album kicks off with Let There Be Death, which is an absolute ripper of a track. Freaking great. You know, it's not blinding speed thrash metal. It's not lightning speed. You know, your hand's an absolute blur because you're just strumming like a maniac. Not quite that level of thrash riffing, but it's certainly heavy. And it is fast. No discredit whatsoever. A great way to kick off the album. Before we get a slightly more heavy metal rooted Metal Force, or Metal Forces, I should say, which is a great track. You know, it's got that, it's very much reminds me of early Slayer in terms of Show No Mercy and Hell Awaits. Got that kind of almost twisted, contorted, traditional heavy metal style. But it's fast, it's thrashing. And actually, Cy does a pretty good vocal performance on that track. I would say that at this stage, he's certainly not a great vocalist. You know, the likes of our Bobby Blitz of Overkill, or even Joey Belladonna of Anthrax. There aren't that many great singers in thrash metal, but I would say credit to Cy, does do a good job here. You know, sounds young and in his infancy as a style. I think his vocal work later gets way better, but focusing on just The Force, Fight with the Beast. Excellent track. An absolute punishing, head-banging, fist pounding track. Absolutely freaking love that. You know, overall the duration of these songs, I should mention, is actually quite long. So where there's only 7 tracks, this is still a good sort of 40-minute plus album. Generally the tracks are sort of 5-6 minutes in duration. Great first side there though. That is a wonderful succession of Let There Be Death, Metal Forces, which is a highlight, and Fight with the Beast, which is a heavier number. Freaking fantastic though, absolutely love it. Side 2 kicks off with Demoniac, or I never know quite how to pronounce it. Demoniac. Yeah, I think Demoniac. Certainly how it's said lyrically in the lyrics there. Great song. Another album highlight, an absolutely fantastic freaking thrashing ripper. Again, does remind me of earlier Slayer, but also kind of brings an Endless Pain kind of vibe to mind as well. As does the next track, Flame of the Antichrist, which is an absolute ripper. Freaking love that. You know, it's solid. It's old school thrash. I think this album, that's one of the things I really love about it, is it does have a really old school vibe. It's definitely got a real old school presence to it. And even the artwork seems really old school. And I've always loved Onslaught's logo as well. I think that's a fantastic, fantastic logo. Flame the Antichrist, brilliant. Contract in Blood, again, it's bringing sort of destruction to mind for me. Before we get a brilliant thrashing closure. Thrash till the death. Amazing stuff. Absolutely brilliant. Start to finish, this is an absolute thrasher of an album, but done really, really freaking well. And I think this is such an underrated gem. It's actually, I would honestly go on record to say that The Force is rapidly becoming one of my favourite thrash albums. I've certainly been, as I say, listening to this on an almost daily basis. Absolutely love it. And Onslaught are becoming a favourite thrash metal band. Although they've had a lot of lineup changes, a lot of things going on behind the scenes. You know, we've had huge periods of time between The Force, for example, and the next full-length album, which was a rather interesting release, In Search of Sanity, which actually features none other than the late, great Steve Grimmett on vocals. You know, so there was quite a period of time between that album and The Force, but an even longer period of time between In Search of Sanity and Killing Peace as well. So, you know, there was a lot working against the band. Certainly when you think that this legendary debut album, Power from Hell, is a bit of a cult classic. It's a fan favourite. But then this masterpiece, you know, a year later, there's a lot of potential there. I feel like Onslaught could definitely have been a lot more if there wasn't so much change and tumultuous stuff going on. But that said, this is a freaking great album. Musicianship is tight, but not tight and mechanical and pristine like we get with more heavy metal bands, I suppose. You know, this isn't Iron Maiden, for example, but I'd say it's pretty tight. It's still got an almost Venom-esque kind of fast and loose approach to the thrash, which is no bad thing. Sounds powerful. I think actually production-wise, it's really good. So it's produced by Onslaught and Dave Death Pine. Very good. I'd say it's got a great sound. Not sure if these are remastered versions, but overall, you know, they sound good. It sounds full. You know, the drums sound full. The bass is thick, and you can actually hear the bass, which is always good. The riffs are cutting and abrasive. Nice dull tone. There's not that kind of sharp, thin tone to the riffs. None of that. Sounds decent. And as I say, Psy, good voice. Definitely better later on. But honestly, this is a fantastic thrash metal album. If you like your Slayer, Creator, or any of the previously mentioned bands, then you're definitely going to dig Onslaught and you're going to dig The Force. This is a fantastic, heavy thrash metal album. Absolutely love it. If you're not familiar with Onslaught, check out The Force, check out latter albums such as Killing Peace, which is a beast of an album. Sounds of Violence is an absolute monster. We've also got, I think it's 6, the album. I would never quite remember. Always get my Roman numerals wrong around. But then we've got another brilliant album in the last few years. I think it was actually 2020, if I'm not much mistaken. So, more than a few years ago now. We've got Generation Antichrist, which is a beast of an album as well. So check out Onslaught, check out The Force. And if you are a fan, what are your thoughts and opinions on this freaking great album, great band? Just quickly show off this lovely picture disc. Ta-da! So I picked this up on Amazon a couple of weeks back because why not? It was very inexpensive and did actually end up getting a partial refund owing to the rather tragic but all too common occurrence that the top of the sleeve has been breached there, which is a great shame, but ended up paying for about £14 for it in the end. So I thought, yeah, I'll take that. There's also a lovely poster in here and a nice lyric insert, but maybe I'll show that off at a later date. So, The Force. What is your thoughts? What are your thoughts and opinions on this one? Very interested to hear. Onslaught, check them out if you haven't already. Thank you very much for watching, my friends. Do feel free to comment. Do feel free to like, subscribe, share. The support is very much appreciated, as always. Do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations and more top picks. Take care of yourselves, my friends, and until next time, stay heavy.